Okay, good morning, everyone. And it's my pleasure to be here um, with each of you this morning. And Dave wishes each of you well, of course, while he's away, caught up with other activities this morning. As you would have seen from the announcement, the theme or subject for today's call is how do we turn our personal weaknesses into business strengths? I'm not sure about you, but one thing that I have noticed is when you're running your own business, it exposes a lot of our own vulnerabilities. Have you noticed that? I think anytime we step outside of our comfort zone and venture into something new, we go through a cycle. And I was talking to my son about this earlier this week as he is venturing off on some new challenges of his own. I said there is a quadrant. He's right now in the process of learning the Russian language before he heads off to Russia in a few weeks. But we go through this journey, this cycle of awareness and improvement and change, which is a little bit like a quadrant. And the first phase of the quadrant, which is perhaps where we might liken it to when we first get going in business, is we are unconsciously incompetent. Meaning we don't know what we don't know. We attend our first ABCs, we have a look in, we peek through the window and we go, yeah, this looks like it's going to be awesome. I know what I'm doing, and off we go. A simple example or comparison to this phase of unconscious incompetence, and I don't say incompetence, of course, in a bad way. There's no negative connotation with that word here. It's a little bit like when we're about to learn to drive a car. Any of you that have got teenage kids may have experienced this already. As they're about to get ready to learn to drive, what do? They start watching how you drive. And if you do something, if you are coming to a light, it suddenly changes. Maybe you put on your brake a bit too fast, or something might happen like that. They go, oh man, I could drive better than you. Well, of course they haven't driven at all yet, so they can't. Right? You've got 20 plus years on them, haven't you? But they don't know what they don't know. It looks easy. You make it look easy, so I reckon I could do it pretty easy too. So that first phase is unconscious incompetence. The next phase, of course, is when they get behind the steering wheel and they suddenly have to do it for themselves. They become consciously incompetent. All of a sudden, I know after driving around the car park and maybe trying to change gears a few times, I go, yeah, this is harder than it looks. And I become aware of my own inadequacy. Sometimes as we go into business and we work for ourselves, and especially within an econ environment as we're learning new skills, that awakening can be a little uncomfortable. We move, though, as we practice, and this is the critical thing, as we practice and we build our business, and as we work on things. I'm going to talk about this phase, how do I improve certain skills? We move from being unconsciously incompetent. We don't have to stay in that space for the rest of time, do we? We can move from becoming awakened to our own vulnerability to changing that. Now that we are awakened or aware, we are now empowered. So with that sense of empowerment, we can now shift into a place where we can take action. And then through practice, we become consciously competent. That's like the driver that's constantly at the 10-2 position. They're driving, they're looking over, they're sitting up straight. I notice my son, he's learning to drive right now. And boy, is his back straight when he's behind the wheel. He sat in the car park the other day, got in, he put a seatbelt on, and it's an empty car park. He's at the back of the car park. Behind him is a hedge. And he sits there and he looks in his rearview mirror, he checks his side mirrors, and then he goes, because that's what he'd been taught. But he's conscious, he's practicing, and he's consciously competent now as he starts to move forward. I love kind of seeing that. There's that innocent activity there as he was practicing driving. But as we move from there and we get familiar and the habits start to form, then we move into the fourth quadrant, the fourth part of the quadrant, which is where we become unconsciously competent. Which means, have you ever done this? You're driving down the road and you go, oh, how did I get here? For the last 10 minutes, you're in a world of your own, but everything you were doing was on autopilot. It was automatic. We want to get to that space, don't we, in our business, where the right behaviors, the right activities, the right personal qualities for being a strong, competent leader are so built in, so ingrained that it's second nature. So I want to talk about how we can do that. Well, first of all, I want to share, as the subject suggested, how to turn personal weaknesses into business strengths. There are two ways. And I would suggest applying both of them. One is a quick way, a cheats way, if you will, and then the other is a long-term approach. So you've got the quick wins and you've got the long-term gains. I'm going to talk about how to do both. What's the quick win approach to turning your weaknesses or vulnerabilities, which we suddenly get exposed to, where we go, no, I'm a confident person, but all of a sudden we realize, oh, that was really scary. I remember when I got made my first promotion in my career, where I got made a manager of a department. I was a graphic designer. I'd come in as a graphic designer for a network marketing company, and I got made their media manager. And I was really excited about this. And a few weeks in to having been promoted, Kim and I went out for a celebration dinner. And we're talking about it, and I'm sharing all my enthusiasm behind why I'm loving my job and what have you. And she said to me, I've got to be honest with you, Ben. When you told me you were being promoted, I thought, he's going to choke. And I was like, I beg your pardon? She said, well, you're just not naturally an assertive person. And if you're going to be a manager of other people, that's going to require you to be assertive. That's not you. You're too soft. And she was right. I was very uncomfortable with some situations. I remember my boss, just a little example, my boss coming to me one day saying, Gareth is late again this morning, Ben. Sort it out. He's your employee. Go tell him to get here on time. And it took me probably about half an hour to build up the courage of going, I'm going to have to tell him, can you please be on time? Stop coming in late. And after I built up the courage and I kind of role played it in my head over and over, I went to him, had the conversation, and you know what? It was absolutely fine. It was over and done in a couple of minutes, and he was okay. And he came in on time the next day, and it was fine. But it was uncomfortable for me. But I recognized that there were certain qualities as a business leader that I wanted to have that I didn't have at the time. And so I knew if I wanted my career to develop, if I wanted to develop, I had to look for those virtues that I respected in great leaders and find opportunities to develop and manifest them in my own life. That meant I had to get out of my comfort zone on a regular basis. So let's start, since we're on that path, with some of the things that we can do to develop those qualities. Well, first of all, we need to know what those qualities are, aren't we? Don't we? So in order to get out of our comfort zone, in order to turn these vulnerabilities or character flaws or weaknesses or opportunities for change, however you want to position it, we need to know what those opportunities are, where they appear within us. So the starting process really is to become a little bit self-aware. It's to move from the unconsciously incompetent phase of our development journey to the consciously incompetent phase. That begins, in a couple of ways. One, we can jump behind the steering wheel, so to speak, using that metaphor, and realize that we are discovering new places where we can be uncomfortable. Once we do that, we can learn through experience where we are falling short and where we want to improve. The other way is also just doing some self-evaluation. Maybe humans being more is a great place to start. Maybe we need to sign up for the next HBM or reflect on our past HBM experience in order to recognize some opportunities there for change. The next phase, of course, to move from unconsciously incompetent to consciously competent, where we start to do good, requires, of course, practice. So one way that I've learned the hard way is to not go all out all at once and run 100 miles an hour with a goal of improving or changing a weakness overnight. If it's a character flaw, if it's a personality trait. If you're introvert by nature and you're wanting to be a bit more extrovert, or if you're an extrovert and you're a natural promoter, if we get into the personality types, but you want to become a little bit more analytical because that's not your nature. You love the analysis of others. So you'll jump on their knowledge and then you want to learn and you just go out there and promote the heck out of it. But you're recognizing I need to do a little bit more of my own analysis to build my own confidence. That's not going to change overnight. If it's a personality trait, like for myself, when I wasn't naturally assertive, and I've got to change that, then we need to appreciate that's not going to happen overnight. So we don't want to rush at that 100 miles an hour. The way to do that is to set small, achievable goals where you can get out of your comfort zone and do something small about it on a consistent basis. Applying yourself on a consistent daily basis in small ways will bring about revolutionary change in our lives. I'm confident of that. I've experienced that. It's little things that we can do day to day or moment to moment that can provide powerful change. So look for ways, set personal goals, evaluate each experience, and look for ways as to how you can improve that going into the next one. If you're nervous, extending invitations after you've given a presentation, or you've built the relationship, and a lot of us in network marketing are pretty good at building relationships. It's one of the things that attracts us. One of the reasons I believe this to be true is simple observation every time I go to an event. Every time I'm at a weekend event, I'm always thrilled, pleased. It always warms my heart when I see in the breaks or when in the practice exercises where people need to talk to each other, just how much people love to chat. It's a comfort zone for many of us. But to turn that into a direct invitation, a call to action, can be scary for some people. So when we do that, make sure that we evaluate, and maybe as we come out and go, okay, I could do this better, let's get specific with it. One thing, if we want to reduce our fears and take control of our comfort zone, one way to do that is to become more comfortable in that part of the zone. And we do that through experience. Learn to swim in that part of the water so that it becomes more familiar to us. The more familiar we are with something, the more comfortable we become. Yeah, that can be said of strengths and weaknesses. Yeah, so we don't want to make sure that we do that with our weaknesses and stay familiar with them. We want to move away from that into the uncomfortable water of turning them into strengths. We do that by making ourselves familiar with that space. One way that we can do that, again, through practice. Another is through research. I would encourage everyone, and it's often my go-to place, Google it, Google it, Google it. How do I do this? How do I do that? Google it. How do I overcome my fears? Google it. Now, I'm not suggesting that the internet has all the best answers, but as we learn to use Google well, smartly, we can start to recognize who are the good go-to people on particular subjects. So when I Google things, there are certain websites that I might favor over others because I have those people that own that website as trusted sources of information. Yeah. So you might start to find, as you Google and do your research, the authorities on a particular subject. You want to find the authority on how to overcome a particular fear, how to develop a particular strength. If I'm terrible with money, I'm going to learn how to become great with money, and I'm going to find the authorities on the subject. If I'm scared with talking to people, I'm going to become an expert by following the experts. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. We simply need to copy it. That's it. So we do our research, we practice, and we copy, and we get out of our comfort zone. But I think doing a little bit of research certainly helps us in overcoming our fears. I would also suggest incorporating into our daily routine visualization activities. And this is a fun one. When I was a teenager, I took up music as a hobby and became a musician. And I learned to play the trombone. And that was a fantastic experience for me. But one thing that helped me learn fast, and I'm thrilled to say, I did learn the instrument pretty quick and had some great experiences as a result. But one thing that helped me get there quick was, for years, all I listened to was jazz. I was a jazz musician. And so I didn't know what was in the charts like my mates did, although most of my close friends ended up becoming jazz musicians. That's perhaps another side note, isn't it? Is hang out with people that you want to be like. That certainly helps. So through association, I surrounded myself with a lot of jazz musicians. And it was my belief that I played in a lot of great bands. And it was my belief that I was perhaps the weakest member of the band. Maybe at first, not towards the end. But at first, as I got into those bands, I thought, it's just because I knew the person that introduced me, that got me in, luck of the draw. Or there's not as many great trombonists around as there are saxophonists or trumpet players. They're more popular instruments. So, it's easier to get in because I play a less familiar or less popular instrument. These were the negative thoughts that I told myself. But the reality was, I think there was a little bit of truth to it. Consequently, though, I was surrounded by great people in a great area where I wanted to do great. And so what happened? I got better and I improved. So if you want to do great, hang around with great people. One of the great places to do that, of course, is at Niken sponsored events, hanging out with our upline, our cross line that we respect and love. But visualizing played a critical part. And one of the things that I found myself doing was I would listen to jazz all the time. I'd lie there with my headphones on, show my age here, with my Walkman. When I was going to bed as a teenager, I'd lie there with my Walkman in my bedroom with me, with my headphones on. I'd be listening to jazz. And what I noticed was there were certain songs that were favorites of mine. And after a while, I remember going, I don't know the melody. I've listened to this song countless times. I don't know the melody. And the reason for that was every time I was listening to it, I was tuned into the trombone part. And I was constantly listening to that part. And what I was doing subconsciously was every time it was playing, I was visualizing that it was me playing it. And I was on a stage somewhere playing the band. It was at a jazz club, and this was the scene. Or I've got this joke now that I have with my 16-year-old son. He loves music as well, and so we put this great song on while we're driving somewhere in the car. And it started out as one of these little visualization things, as a funny joke with him, but it's become a constant thing now, where we put the song on, and he says to me, "Oh, Dad, imagine this. You're in school, and you're at the school assembly, and this is happening, and it's a school performance. They're going to have a band playing, and out starts this song, and you walk onto the stage. You pick up your guitar, you wrap it around your neck, you put the strap on over your shoulder, and you start to play, and then this happens." And he pushes the play button. And as he starts to play, out comes this incredible guitar riff, or it's a piano part, or it's a great singer, or whatever it is. And he just has this wonderful visualization moment. But for him, that visual scene is you're at school at a school assembly, all the pretty girls are watching, and he's an incredible musician. He shocks everyone, and it's just an incredible thing that happens. It's become a funny thing for us. But you can see, can't you, that with the power of great visualization, you get motivation to improve and to get out of the comfort zone and to start swimming in it, to get into that place where it is a little bit scary, where it makes your heart race a little bit more. Get into those places. If we don't do it with visualization, then it's just uncomfortable and unpleasant. And if it's constantly uncomfortable and unpleasant, we're not going to do it for very long before we stop. We need to have motivation to keep us doing it day to day when it's uncomfortable, and we know that change is happening over the long term versus the short term. Because we're trying to work on certain personality traits or character flaws or areas of vulnerability that may have been built in over the years, we need to recognize that it will take some time moving forward to unwind, unravel, and redirect ourselves. And like I said, we've got to get into that space consistently. We need to do it on a regular basis. It will be uncomfortable. We need to do our research so we know what good looks like. We need to have an opportunity where we can visualize and see not just that I can do it, but that I'm awesome doing it. Yeah, we've got to have that moment, not in a bragging, boastful way, but just in a way where you're loving life, where you are who you want to be, where this character trait isn't just that I've just overcome a weakness, but where it is a compelling strength, where if people look at you, they don't go, oh yeah, that's that person that's naturally shy, or that's that person that does this or that. It's the total opposite, and it's your strength in abundance. Visualize it in gluttonous proportion so that you can look at that situation there and not just simply go, I need to get rid of this habit. Don't just look at getting rid of bad habits. Don't just look at going, I need to eliminate this piece of darkness or this weakness. Look at it at going, I'm going to make this a strength. Admiral Jim Stockdale, the Stockdale paradox. I've shared this before. The highest ranking military official captured during the Vietnam War. He came out not only a survivor, but a thriver. And they said, how have you done this? How have you come out of this prisoner of war camp where you've been repeatedly tortured, where your colleagues have died, and you've come out a stronger person? And he said, I had to do two things. The first was I had to accept the brutal facts of my present reality, which is that first part that we talked about, becoming self-aware. I was unconsciously incompetent. I was in a situation here that I felt like initially I had no control over, or I was in the situation where I felt very terribly vulnerable and nervous as to how I approach my business in this aspect. I had to accept the brutal facts of my present reality. But then he said, I also had to realize that I was going to turn this experience into the defining experience of my life, that in retrospect, I would not change. Can you imagine coming out of being a prisoner of war for years, having been repeatedly tortured, having seen your friends die, having spent countless months, even years, wondering, will I ever see my family again? And if so, in what condition will I find them or me? I'm not there to take care of them. They don't know where I'm at. They're suffering right now. To take that and go, I'm going to turn this into the defining experience of my life that in retrospect I wouldn't change. I wouldn't trade those years for anything. If I had my time over, yes, I would do it again because it's made me who I am. If we can have that perspective and go into these challenges where we really want to change for the better, we can have an incredible experience. Now, I did say I was going to give you a shortcut. So here's the shortcut. But I'm not saying that we choose the shortcut over this. I'm suggesting we do both. Yeah. So we need to be mindful of those situations, get out of our comfort zone, visualize, do our research, associate with great people, and get to work. If we can follow those steps, then great things lie ahead in our future. And the great thing about Niken is it gives you an environment and a framework to constantly get outside of your comfort zone and practice. Yeah. So it's really helpful that we can do that. But what's the shortcut? What's the trick if you want to get there quicker and at least get results faster in your business? Well, this is the thing that I find really enjoyable. I had a friend of mine who was a great network marketer. He was great when it came to leading a team. When he had the vision, he knew what he wanted to achieve. Boy, he knew what he wanted to get done. He knew how to put on a show, host an event, and get the room filled. He could fill the room time after time after time. He was also great at recruiting. Everywhere he went, every time I was with him, he sponsored people. If we were in a taxi, driving somewhere together, he'd recruit the taxi driver, get their contact details. He'd get them signed up. And he did this so much that he'd just give them to his downline. He'd say, oh, here you go. You follow that up. And he'd invite them to meetings. He'd get them to this. Yeah, to whatever was happening, he'd get them coming along. If we went to a restaurant, he'd get the contact details of the waiter. He'd get the contact details of the restaurant owner. Everywhere we went, he could constantly recruit other people. He was incredible. But he had some incredible flaws as well when it came to getting things done. He was not great at getting things organized. He could run the event. He could get that going fantastically. But what he couldn't do was all the details. He certainly couldn't get the website going. He couldn't do the email campaigns. He couldn't manage technical things. Part of me often wondered, legitimately, if maybe he was illiterate, because what he did was he teamed up with someone that acted as his organizer, his PA, if you will. And this is what he'd do, and this is the trick, is he would say, if there is something that I can't do, then I just recruit someone that can do it. He says, I struck a deal with them. And so he'd say, look, you're a fantastic web designer. I've got a business that I'm running right now, but I need a great web designer, and you would be awesome at this. And I need your help. He says, but I tell you what, if you can help me, then let me help you. And he would offer a reciprocal arrangement of service. And so what he'd do is he'd say, you'd do great in this business. He says, but if you're not comfortable recruiting and signing up people, I'm great at that. I can recruit more people than I need. So what I'll do is I'll recruit them and I'll sign them up under you, so that you've got the people going in your team. He says, but if you can do this for me and build the team, then I'll do this for you and build your team. And he'd do the same with other people. And so what he did was he identified the areas where he was weak, identified the areas where he was strong, and he would offer to provide that strength to other people in the business if they would come in and offer that strength to his team. So he looked for a specific skill set within his team. I need people that can organize events, do the admin and all that kind of stuff, that can set up appointments, that can arrange and do all the follow-up, that kind of stuff. I'll get people in the room. I'll do all the sign-up. I'm a great closer. I'll close everyone, and I'll recruit everyone, and I'll put them all underneath you. So he had his team that had a specific skill set, and they were a tight-knit organization. And everywhere he went, his team went with him. And it was powerful. So what I would suggest is, if you want the quick solution, look at what your ideal team looks like. Your ideal team. When you've got all of your core leaders working together, what skill sets exist in that ideal team? Then look at what you bring to the table, look at what's missing, and say, okay, I'm going to recruit those guys that have that skill set. Go after them specifically. Go after them specifically. And then as you bring them in, offer a reciprocal service. I need the skill set in my team. You can bring that to the table, but in exchange, I will bless and benefit your business by doing the following with my strengths to complement your weaknesses, so that your weakness becomes my strength, and my strength compensates for your weakness. That way, you've got strength upon strength upon strength in every area of your business. That's a great way. Recruit the people that have the strengths that you don't have. That's the quick win. That's the leverage that we can utilize in network marketing. We don't have to be like a self-employed agent. That I remember when I was a freelance designer, I was great at design, but then all of a sudden I had to get new clients, which meant I had to be a sales rep. I also had to do my own taxes, which meant I had to be an accountant and be a tax man. I had to know all about administration and doing invoices and receipts and all that kind of stuff. I had to do all of that menial, that stuff that I just found so distracting and frustrating. But in network marketing, you don't have to do all that. Find the people that are happy to do it, sign them up, and then you compensate by bringing your strengths to the table. Look for the strengths that you need, recruit it, and then provide your service in exchange for that. That way, we can work together as a great team and have power coming from it with a multiplied effect. And at the same time, of course, if you're working on that with your own strength, your own long-term strategies to become a better leader and more fully developed, well-rounded individual, you'll have a wonderful journey along the way as well. I hope this has been helpful, and I hope you've got vision of what you can become down the road as a consequence of confronting your fears, your vulnerabilities, your inadequacies, and seeing ways where we can turn them into glorious, wonderful strengths. And of course, how you can get there quickly by partnering up with people that have those strengths and abilities already. Thank you very much for letting me join you this morning. Hope this has been a great help, and we'll speak to you soon. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.